Hi, and welcome back to This Week in Biotech by Biotech Blueprint, edition 81, covering biotech and pharma news from December 5th to December 11th, 2025. Before we get into clinical news, the biggest shift this week, I think, came from the Federal Reserve. They cut interest rates again on December 10th, which is the second cut this year. The first one was in September. And that officially puts us in an easing cycle. And why that matters for biotech is because lower rates have historically been the best backdrop for the sector. Across 45 years of data, biotech has delivered roughly 47% annual returns during periods when rates are falling compared with losses when rates are rising. Lower rates make future earnings more valuable and reopen the flow of funding, partnerships, and acquisitions. And so the effect usually shows up over the next 1 to 3 quarters. And with 2 cuts already behind us and more expected in 2026, the macro headwind that pushed biotech down from 2022 to 2024 has now flipped into a real tailwind. One of the biggest clinical news this week came from Eli Lilly, which released the first phase 3 data for retatrutide, its so-called triple agonist that activates 3 hormonal pathways regulating appetite and metabolism, and the results look like something beyond the current generation of weight loss drugs. In adults with both obesity and knee osteoarthritis, the highest dose produced almost 29% weight loss among patients who stayed on treatment. That is an average of 71 pounds and roughly 24% weight loss even when including people who dropped out of the trial. That gets impressively close to bariatric surgery territory. But the second half of the story is almost more interesting. Knee pain fell by 75%. And more than 1 in 8 patients finished the trial completely pain-free. But of course, when I hear this, I think this must be because of the weight loss. But it seems that the magnitude of pain relief suggests more than just weight loss. So it seems that this triple agonist also has anti-inflammatory effect. Last Friday on December 5th, the advisory committee that guides national vaccine policy voted 8-3 to remove the universal recommendation for the newborn hepatitis B shot for babies whose mothers test negative. Instead, they suggested using shared decision-making, so decision based on the mother and her clinical team. This is a major reversal. The birth dose recommendation has been credited with a 99% reduction in childhood hepatitis B since 1991 when this was started. The debate inside the committee was intense with rewritten ballots and procedural confusion. Medical groups immediately warned that infections will rise if the universal recommendation disappears. But it's not final yet. Republican Senator Bill Cassidy, who is a hepatologist, publicly urged the new acting director of the CDC not to adopt the change. So the decision now sits with leadership, and the outcome will likely set the tone for how much national consistency remains in the U.S. vaccine schedule. And this is concerning for several reasons. I get asked a lot, why do babies need to be vaccinated against hepatitis B right at the hospital? And there are several reasons. Usually the anti-vaccine community or skeptical people say that it's a sexually or bodily fluid transmitted disease, and so kids don't need it. So the problem is with hepatitis B is that it's different than in adults. A lot of adults clear the infection, but babies, when they acquire hepatitis B that early, they usually tend to develop a lifelong chronic infection, which can obviously then lead to problems with liver, like cirrhosis and liver cancer. And the problem with getting exposed to hepatitis B is multifold. So obviously the mom has been tested. There are some false negatives, which is one issue. The other issue is that you don't know who the baby is exposed to, right? The virus can live on surfaces for several days. People in the household who may not know that they're infected can have a minor cut, and then the baby can get exposed to blood. That happens. And in the United States, most people who have chronic hepatitis B are not aware of it. And so I agree with the medical communities that unfortunately infections will arise if these universal recommendations disappear. Noubar Afeyan, the co-founder of Moderna, said the United States is in danger of losing its leadership in vaccine and mRNA technology. His argument is that government funding has pulled back exactly as vaccine skepticism has grown, while China is doing the opposite and aggressively investing in biotechnology without the political friction. He also pushed back on concerns about mRNA vaccine safety, citing global analyses that estimate the first year of COVID vaccination prevented nearly 20 million deaths worldwide. So these comments come as the FDA is reviewing possible COVID-19 vaccine-related deaths. And while Moderna's revenue has been defined almost entirely by a shrinking COVID franchise. And since I'm already talking about COVID vaccines, a large CDC study of more than 98,000 children showed that the 2024-2025 COVID vaccines showed a strong protection in children. The shot reduced emergency and urgent care visits by 76% in toddlers and preschoolers and 56% in school-age kids and teenagers. However, only 13% of children received the updated shot, which is the lowest uptake of any routine childhood vaccination. And that low uptake intersects with a national shift away from universal recommendations and toward more individualized discussion with clinicians. And lastly, there's a lot more that I covered in the full edition and also in the summary that you can read it on Substack. But just quickly, Biohaven reported early phase 1 results for its TROP2 targeting antibody drug conjugate combined with immunotherapy drug Libtayo. And they show that even in heavily pretreated patients and most that have failed prior anti-PD-1 therapy, this combo delivered 52% response rate, including 60% in lung cancer, 100% in endometrial cancer, and 50% in urothelial cancer. And then Chimera Therapeutics posted early phase 1b data for its oral STAT6 degrader. STAT6 is a transcription factor that drives type 2 inflammation, which can then cause eczema, asthma, and allergic disease. And so this drug reduced STAT6 levels by more than 90% in both blood and skin lesions, which is near ideal proof of mechanism. Patients saw 63% reduction in eczema severity and 40% drop in itch after just 4 weeks with no serious safety issues. Early improvements in asthma and allergic rhinitis are also interesting because they imply a platform effect, not just a dermatology win. So that's all for this week in this video, and I'll be back next week with the last episode of this year.